Hi everyone, welcome back to Ajay Automation channel. So if you are preparing for an automation testing interview right now, this video is really going to be a game changer for you. So I'll be quickly walking you through 100 real and commonly asked interview questions and answer recently came across many top companies. Okay, so I'll be covering topics from Selenium, Java, TestNG, Maven, Jenkins, CI/CD and from Java programs as well. So believe me guys, these questions are not just theory questions. These are based on real feedback from candidates who actually faced these questions in 2025 in many interviews. Okay, so at the end of this video you will know exactly what to expect in your interviews, and you can use this as a revision checklist before your next interview. Okay, so let's quickly jump into the topic. So the first question is, can you describe the most complex test scenario you have automated? Okay, this is really important question. So you might have either worked in UI automation or API automation. If you have worked only in UI automation, you can explain about your end-to-end scenario. Okay, consider you worked in an e-commerce application from login to product search to add to cart, applying a coupon, checkout and order confirmation. This is an end-to-end scenario in your application, right? You can talk about it. So I have automated end-to-end scenarios. So integration test cases, these are some critical test cases I have automated. Okay, so if you have knowledge in API automation or if you have performed API automation, you can talk about UI and API integrations. Okay, consider your application has any forms. So after submitting a form using Selenium, I used rest assured in Java to call the API and check the data was saved correctly. So here in API automation, we will check UI and API integrations are working fine correctly using rest assured. Okay, so this question is really important, so please do prepare. Okay, this was asked in many interviews. So the next question is, can you describe your end-to-end Selenium automation execution in the CI/CD pipeline? So as you know, most of the frameworks works in CI/CD pipeline, so you should know how CI/CD pipeline is working. So after your test script creation and code review is done, we'll be merging the changes to the master branch, which will automatically trigger a CI build in Bamboo or Jenkins. Okay, so what will we do next? We will verify the logs or test results in Bamboo and Jenkins. Okay, also you can explain, I have configured email notification, so whenever the build is failing, we'll get email notification. Or you might configure like whenever build is passing also, you can trigger email notification. Okay, also talk about we have configured CI/CD pipeline to execute every 24 hours automatically. Okay, so the next question is, what challenges you have faced while running Selenium tests in the CI/CD pipeline? Okay, so the common challenges are the test passed in local can fail in the CI/CD pipeline. Okay, because in pipeline we execute tests in headless browser mode, and issues like missing dependencies for browsers can cause test failures. So you need to modify the browser setup to CI/CD automation test execution. Okay, also integrating Docker files, YAML files in the framework and setting up the configurations were really challenging. So these are new technologies, right? So you can explain these were also challenging to me for learning and implementing. Okay, so the next question is, what branching strategy you follow in your automation projects? So you can explain like you have two branches like master and develop branch, where the master branch contains the code that's been tested thoroughly. So usually you push the, once your test scripting is done, you push the code changes to the develop branch, and after code review is done, you will create a PR and then only you will merge it to master branch. So master branch contains the stable code that has been thoroughly tested. Okay, so I explain about these two branches for this question. Okay, so the next question is, how do you stage and commit a file in Git? Basically they're asking how will we push or add a commit and these changes into our push our code to Git repository. Okay, so git add, git commit and git push command are used for this operation. Okay, for staging and committing a file in Git, these commands are enough. So the next question is, why are you using the TestNG library in your automation framework? Because TestNG annotations help our code more readable. Okay, it helps in code structuring, also it helps in grouping, prioritizing tests, and it supports parallel testing. And Selenium does not have the capability for auto report generation, right? So using TestNG we can generate HTML reports as well. So this is why we are using TestNG library in our framework. So the next question is, what improvements you have made to improve your test automation framework? So you might have improved your test automation framework by integrating extend reports instead of TestNG reports, okay, for better UI, and you might have performed regular code optimization to improve your test execution time. You might have configured CI/CD automation. You might have implemented parallel execution. So you can talk about these things in the interview, okay. So the next question is, what are the major challenges you have faced during automation? So initially you can talk about test case selection for automation. I had around 500 or 1000 test cases. So I want to choose the automation test case. That was a challenge. And we can talk about the handling dynamic web elements here, and talk about test environment stability also, because the locators might keep on changing as developer pushes new changes. So we overcome it by making sure developers don't change existing DOM structure or any web elements. In this way we worked on test environment stability. You can talk about these three things, okay. Next question is, how will you rerun failed test cases after test execution? So TestNG generates a file like testng fail.xml, right? So you can open that file, which will present inside the test output folder, and you can see how many test cases are failed, and you can rerun the file, okay. Next question is, in your project there can be thousands of test cases. How do you choose automation test case? So usually choose in the order: critical test cases should be automated first, and then high priority, and finally medium priority test cases or UI test cases can be automated, okay. So the next question is, how do you perform code optimization? So code optimization is done to improve our test execution speed, okay, by removing sleep commands and by avoiding implicit wait, and use explicit wait whenever required, and put all the common tests in your base class and call them in tests as required, okay. Also following the page object model design pattern to improve code reusability and readability are some ways we have performed for code optimization. So this question is being asked in many interviews, so please prepare this question, okay. So let's see the next question. What type of design pattern you are following for maintaining automation test scripts? So we can talk about page object model design pattern here. That is, for every web page in our application we have corresponding object classes, okay. Next question is, do you execute tests locally or do you have CI/CD pipeline? So if you are executing tests only in local, you can talk like we have not configured pipeline so far, so we are executing locally. If we are using pipeline like in Bamboo or Jenkins, you can talk like we are executing tests both in local as well as in CI/CD pipelines, okay. So what is a headless browser and why it is used in CI? So a headless browser runs without an UI, okay, because it speeds up execution and suits CI environments where no GUI is available. In CI environments there will not be any GUI, okay, graphical user interface. So we need to run our tests in headless browser mode or we will face a lot of failures, okay. So this is an important point. In CI we'll run our tests only in headless browser mode mostly, okay. Next question is, how do you generate test results in your automation framework? So you can talk about extend report or allow reports which you have configured in your automation framework. After every test execution, the HTML file will be generated. That file will be verifying how many test cases are passed, failed, and what are the errors faced during execution, and screenshots, okay. So next question is, how many test cases you automate in a sprint usually? So usually if it is a critical test case, we will automate around 3 to 4, and if it is a major functional test case, we'll automate 6 to 8, and if it is an UI related, we can automate more than 10 test cases, okay. Next question is, how do you manage test data in your Selenium automation framework? So you can talk about Excel files or JSON files or property files. From these files we are calling data to our Selenium test. If we are using Excel, talk about Apache Poi library usage also, okay. Next question is, what are the different types of exceptions you have seen during automation? There are multiple exceptions. We have seen at least top 5 exceptions in the interview, okay. No such element, timeout, IO exception, null pointer, and array index out of mode exceptions are some of the commonly seen exceptions during automation. So how will you handle exceptions? So we can go for using try catch block and use explicit wait also along with try catch block, just to make sure element is visible, and then you perform the operations. Okay, so here the keywords are try catch blocks and explicit wait for handling exception. So the next question is, consider that your application pages are loading very slowly. How will you handle this case? So the best way is to use explicit wait to wait for specific element to appear, to be clickable or to be present. So it handles slow loading elements efficiently. Okay, next question is, why do we need to use waits during automation? So okay, there are different types of waits like implicit, explicit, fluent. So why do we need those waits? Sometimes it takes a longer time for web element to appear on the screen. At that time our test might throw no such element exception or element not visible exception. To handle this case, we go for using Selenium waits. Okay, this is an important question. Next question is, how do you scroll down to a particular web element using Selenium? Using JavaScript executor and scroll into view method, we can scroll down to a particular web element. Okay, next question is, how do you verify that the drop down has all the expected options? So drop down might have multiple values, right? So how can we validate it has all the expected options? So we can get all the options of the drop down using get options method and compare with the list, expected list. Okay, so how will we automate drop downs using Selenium? We can automate drop downs using select class. So using select by value, index and visible text, we can select values from the drop down. Next question is, if the select class is not working, how can we automate drop downs using Selenium? Okay, so try normal click whether it is working the drop down field. So you can locate the drop down and click and open it, and then click on the option using drop down option using XPath or CSS selector. If the normal click is not working, for example basically due to JavaScript based UI or hidden elements, you can go for using JavaScript executor to perform the click. Okay, next question is, how will you verify whether an element is visible or not in a web page? So to check whether an element is visible in the UI, you can go for using isDisplayed method. Okay, and next question is, how will you verify whether an element is present on a web page? To check whether an element is present, we can use find elements and check if the list size is greater than 0. Okay, so this will check whether the element is present in the document object model and returns. So basically what we are doing, we are using find elements and checking if the list size is greater than 0 here. Okay, using find elements, I am identifying the web element and I'm storing it into a list, and I'm just checking the size is greater than 0. If it is greater than 0, the element is present, else the element is not present. Okay, next question is, how will we handle alert? So using switch to method, we can switch the Selenium control to the alert message, and using accept method, we can click OK button. Using dismiss method, we can click cancel button, and to get the text present in alert window, we can use get text method. Okay, how can we handle new browser windows or tabs using Selenium? So to handle new browser windows or tabs, we can go for using window handles. Okay, so talk about window handles here and talk about switch to method usage also here. Okay, so next question is, how can we handle multiple alerts occurring at the same time using Selenium? So a tricky one. So Selenium can handle only one alert at a time. So if multiple alerts are present, we must handle them one by one. Okay, so we cannot handle multiple alerts at the same time. We have to handle alerts one by one. So next question is, without send keys, how can we type text in an input box? So we can achieve using JavaScript executor, right? So without using send keys, if we can use JavaScript executor to type text in a text box. So difference between get and navigate. So for page loading alone, we can use get method, and for navigating pages between going forward, going backward, we can use navigate method. It maintains browser history. Okay, navigate to method. So next question is, how will you launch browsers using Selenium? So from Selenium 4 using WebDriver manager, we can launch browsers using Selenium. Okay, we no need to set up the system.set property or download Chrome driver now. So just use WebDriver manager. So in the pom.xml file, add the dependency. So WebDriver manager.chromedriver.setup initializes the WebDriver and WebDriver driver equal to new Chrome driver launch as a new Chrome session. So how can we handle dynamic web elements? So in Selenium we handle dynamic web elements using XPath functions or CSS selector, and also by implementing explicit waits to ensure the element is ready. So XPath functions like contain, start with helps to identify dynamic web elements, and also use explicit wait to make sure the element is visible or clickable to perform the corresponding action. Okay, so next question is, what is relative and absolute XPath? Which one is more preferred for locating web elements? So whenever relative XPath is working, so just go for relative XPath because it is directly referencing the web element. So for absolute XPath, meaning we are starting from the root node to the target element. So if any changes are happening in your HTML tree, absolute XPath might break. So relative XPath is more preferred. So what are the locators you are using for automation? So ID, XPath, CSS selector, class name, link text, partial link text are some of the locators we are using for automation. So next question is, when do you choose ID and what scenarios? You go for XPath and CSS selector. So web elements are unique, meaning we can go for ID definitely because it's the fastest way to locate a web element. So we go for XPath when the web element is not unique, and when we want to navigate up and down the document object model, we can go for XPath. We can use CSS selector when the DOM structure is simple and CSS is cleaner and easier to maintain. Okay, so next question is, what software is required to run a Selenium project? So we need Java, we need editor like Eclipse or VS Code or IntelliJ, we need Maven, and we need TestNG and Selenium dependencies. So next question is, why do you use Selenium when there are many other automation tools in the market? So say because Selenium is open source, no cost is involved, it supports multiple operating systems and multiple browsers, and we can easily integrate Selenium with libraries like Cucumber, TestNG, JUnit, and we can perform CI/CD automation using Jenkins and Bamboo, okay, on the Selenium projects. That's why we are using Selenium. So can you write XPath for the below code? So in the interviews they are asking to write XPath. They'll share their screen and ask you to write XPath for some web elements. So prepare these questions, okay. Next question is, what would you do if multiple tabs are opened and you want to switch to the one with a specific page title? Consider like 3 or 4 tabs are opened, you want to switch to a specific page title. So what we can do here, get all the window handles using get window handles and loop through each of the windows using switch to method. Okay, so for each tab we have to check the page title using get title, and if the title matches the expected one, we can break the loop and continue testing in that particular tab. So talk about get window handles and using looping mechanism, okay, also switch to. So the next question is, what is the difference between find element and find elements? So find element and find elements both are used to locate web elements on the web page. The difference is find element helps to find a single matching web element, where find elements returns a list of matching web elements. Okay, so next question is, how do you handle keyboard and mouse interactions using Selenium? So you can use actions class for handling keyboard and mouse interactions. What is the difference between close and quit commands? Close command closes the current browser window, whereas quit command closes all the browser windows and end all the WebDriver session. So what are the interfaces available in your automation framework? So there are multiple interfaces like WebDriver, JavaScript executor, actions, text screenshot, logging, etc. Okay, so what is the version control platform you're using? We are using Git for version control and GitHub Bitbucket for hosting platforms for Git repositories. So what are the TestNG annotations you are using in your automation framework? So there are multiple annotations like at test, at before method, at after method. Okay, so explain about the annotations you are using. Can we have multiple attest methods in one class? Yes, we can have multiple attest methods in a class, and TestNG will execute all of them. Okay, next question is, what is the use of priority in TestNG? Priority determines in the order in which your test methods should be executed. So lower priority will run first. Okay, if priority is not defined, test runs in alphabetical order, that is from A to Z. Okay, What is the use of invocation count in TestNG? So if you want to run the same test method multiple times, we can use invocation count annotation. Okay, what is the purpose of grouping in TestNG? So consider your project have 500 or 1000 test cases. If you want to group test cases like smoke or regression or sanity, you can use TestNG grouping. Okay, groups are collections of multiple test case methods combined into one unit. So grouping is really important, so please prepare grouping related interview question. Okay, what is the purpose of assertion in Selenium? Assertion is used to verify expected and actual results of a test. Okay, so the primary purpose of assertion is to verify application behaves as expected. Okay, next question is, what is the purpose of parameterization in TestNG? So parameterization meaning it allows the same test to run with different sets of input data. Okay, suppose if you want to validate the same functionality with multiple input combinations, you can go for parameterization. What are the ways to achieve parameterization in TestNG? So using at parameters annotation and at data provider annotation, we can achieve parameterization in TestNG. Okay, what is the use of iTest listener in a TestNG? How have you used it in your framework? So iTest listener is used to perform specific actions at different point in your test execution cycle. Okay, such as logging test start and logging test end, and for capturing screenshots on failure, and for integrating with reporting tools. Okay, so the next question is, consider that your payment test should run only after the card tests have passed. How would you set up this group dependency in TestNG? So you might remember depends on group annotation. So we can, whenever tests are dependent on other tests, we can use depends on groups or depends on methods annotation. So in this case they are asking about group, so we can use depends on groups annotation. Okay, so why would you need to handle cookies during automation testing? So this handling cookies is important. So we need to handle cookies during automation to manage user sessions, to maintain our login state, and to simulate different user roles. Okay, so it helps improve test efficiency by bypassing repetitive authentication steps. Okay, handling cookies improves our test efficiency, okay, by bypassing repetitive authentication steps. So explain this in the interview. And the next question is, how can you delete a specific cookie in Selenium? So there is a method like delete cookie named method. You can use this specific method to delete a specific cookie. Okay, so we are jumping into Java and OOPS concepts now. So from question number 59. Okay, so what are the OOPS concepts you are aware of and where you have applied them in automation? So this is an important interview question. So we are using OOPS concepts like inheritance, encapsulation, polymorphism, and abstraction. So, and explain where you have used inheritance and encapsulation, method overloading, overriding, and abstraction in your framework. Okay, next question is difference between throw and throws. So throw and throws are both used in exception handling. Throw is used inside a method to manually throw an exception, whereas throws is used in the method signature to indicate that the method may throw one or more exceptions. So explain this different to the interviewer. Okay, how do you stop a loop once a specific web element is found and interacted with? So basically we can use break statement here to stop the loop. Okay, and difference between final, finally, and finalize keyword. A final variable value cannot be changed and a final method cannot be overridden. Also final class cannot be extended. So finally is a block used in exception handling. It will always execute after the try catch block. Okay, and finalize is a method defined in the object class. It is called by the garbage collector just before an object is removed from the memory. So we need to explain this differences. Okay, next question is, what are the types of loops in Java and which one do you use most in automation? So there are different loop like for loop, while loop, do while loop, and enhance for loop. So in automation I mostly use the for loop and for each loop. So you can explain for loop is useful when I need to work with element indexes, and for each loop is great for iterating collections like list without dealing with indexes. Okay, so the next question is, how do you loop through multiple web elements using Selenium? Here they are asking, how do we loop through web elements using Selenium? So we can use find elements to get a list of web elements and loop through them using for each loop or for loop and perform different actions based on your test case. Okay. Next question is, in a dynamic table, how would you search for a specific value using loops and act like clicking, edit and delete? So in a dynamic table, we can loop, if there are multiple elements, we can loop through find elements and we need to compare the cell values in the table. And when the match is found, we can perform actions like clicking, edit, delete or using relative locators with the same row. So I have provided a sample code also below. Okay, nowadays I am getting a lot of I'm seeing a lot of questions from dynamic table or table related test cases, so go through it please. Okay, so the next question is, what is an array in Java, how it is different from an array list? Array is fixed size, whereas array list is resizable and provide more built-in methods for easy manipulation. Okay, so next question is, can you store different data types in a single array? Why or why not? So Java arrays are type specific, so we cannot store multiple data types in an array, but we can use object to hold mixed types at the cost of type safety. Okay, you can explain this in the interview. We can you store different data types in a single array? No. Okay, Java arrays are type specific, so you can't store multiple data types, but we still can use object array to hold mixed types at the cost of type safety. So the next question is, how can you compare two arrays, example except actual versus expected values on a web page? Okay, we can compare two arrays using arrays.equals method for exact match, or use loops to compare element by element, especially when you are verifying UI data in test automation. So basically for this question, the answer arrays.equals keyword is really important. Okay, next question is difference between method overloading and overriding. So method overloading means having multiple methods with the same name but different parameters in the same class. It is compile time polymorphism. So method overriding is runtime polymorphism, meaning redefining a parent class method in the child class with the same signature. Okay, explain the difference here. And next question is really important, asked in many interviews. You might be already aware of this. Difference between abstract class and interface. So abstract class can have both abstract and non-abstract methods. It supports constructors and instance variables, and interface can only contains abstract methods by default, and it cannot have any constructors or instance variables. Okay, so explain these differences. What is the purpose of static keyword in Java? So we use static to define members that belongs to the class. Okay, static keyword saves memory and it improves performance and allow access without creating an object. So talk about memory efficiency and no need to create object. Okay, because static methods can be accessed directly with the class name. Okay, so these are some keywords for the interview. So do not miss these keywords: memory efficiency, no need to create object. Okay, because static methods can be accessed directly with the class name. So these are some importance of static keyword. Can you name all access modifiers and explain the difference between them? So public, protected, default and private are some access modifiers used in Java. Next question is, suppose here test method is declared as private in TestNG, will it run? So this is a tricky one, that no, the test method will not run if it is declared as private. Okay, because TestNG requires test methods to be public or default to be executed. Okay, so next question is, can you override a private method in Java? No, we cannot override private methods in Java because private methods are not visible to subclasses, so they cannot be inherited. Okay, next question is, why are web element variables usually declared as private or protected in page object model classes? In page object model, web element variables are usually declared as private or protected to follow the principle of encapsulation. So when they ask where you have applied encapsulation concept in automation, you can explain this use case. Okay. Next question is, how is string different from string buffer and string builder? This is also asking many question interviews. Okay, so string is immutable, which means once it's created it cannot be changed. Okay, string buffer is mutable and string builder is also mutable, but string buffer is thread safe but string builder is not thread safe. Okay, explain these differences. Next question is, what is the difference between break and continue? So we use break and continue inside loops, where break stops the loop completely and continue skips the current iteration and moves to the next one. Okay. Next question is, what is the difference between this and super keywords? This keyword refers to the current class instance, whereas super keywords refers to the parent class instance. Okay, so basically we can use this keyword if you want to access the current class variables or constructors. Use super keyword to access the parent class variables, methods or constructor. Can a final method be overridden? No, a final method cannot be overridden. Okay, declaring a method final means it's fixed and cannot be changed by subclasses. So the next question is, what is the difference between checked and unchecked exceptions? So checked exceptions are checked at compile time. The compiler forces us to handle them using try catch block. Okay, whereas unchecked exceptions are checked at runtime and not at compile time. Okay, the compiler does not force us to handle them. Example or null pointer exception, array index out of bound exception. Okay, so can we have multiple catch blocks for one try block? Yes, definitely. Java allows multiple catch blocks to handle different types of exceptions separately. Next question is, what happens if an exception occurs in the catch block? Okay, tricky one. So if an exception is thrown in the catch block and it is not handled, it will propagate like any other exception and may cause the program to crash. Okay. So next question is, can you catch multiple exceptions one block? Yes. In Java, we can catch multiple exceptions in one block using the pipe symbol. Okay, below is an example code for that. Next question is, what is throwable in Java? So in Java, throwable is the super class of all the errors and all the exceptions. That is, it's the root class for anything that can be thrown using the throw statement. Okay, next question is, what happens if an exception is thrown in the finally block? Okay, if an exception is thrown in the finally block, so the finally block can replace exceptions from try or catch block which can hide the original error. So it's always best to avoid throwing exceptions in the finally block. Okay, because an exception in the finally block can replace exceptions from try or catch block, which will hide the original error eventually. So it's better to avoid throwing exceptions from finally block. So what are the main interfaces in the Java collections framework? Collections, list, set, queue and map are some of the major interfaces in the collection framework. So what is the difference between array and array list? What is the difference between hash map and tree map? Are mostly commonly asked in many interviews. So please do prepare these questions, differences. Okay, so the next question is, what is multi-threading and how is it used in test automation? Multi-threading meaning running multiple threads at the same time. It helps to do many tasks in parallel. Okay, making programs more faster and more efficient. So in automation testing, multi-threading is used in parallel testing, where multiple threads run at the same time, right? So this is an example for multi-threading. Difference between a process and a thread: a process is an independent program with its own memory space, whereas a thread is smaller unit inside a process. Okay, so that's the difference. What is a deadlock? Can it occur in test automation framework? Yes. So a deadlock can occur in test automation framework when multiple threads or processes attempt to lock resources in a conflicting manner. Okay, deadlocks can definitely happen in automation framework when multiple threads attempt to lock resources. Okay, how do you ensure thread safety in test automation? So there are many ways here. We can avoid shared state and we can run tests independently and clean up after every test run. So use thread safe tools, use tools and libraries that support parallel execution. Okay, so next question is, what are Java streams? How are they different from collection? Java streams let us process data from collections by using simple steps like filtering, mapping, and reducing. So how does it differ from collection? Collections store data. They are like containers holding elements, but streams does not store data. They let process data from collections in a sequence of operation. That is the difference between collections and streams. Okay, so where do we use Java streams in Selenium automation? We have used Java stream to process list of web elements easily from web page. For example, we have using scenarios like to check all the list box are checked in selected on a web page to get all visible product names from a list on a web page. So these are some scenarios I've used Java streams for. Okay, next question is how to remove duplicates from a list using stream. So we can use distinct method here for this particular use case. Below is a simple sample program for the same. Okay, and I have listed commonly asked programs for the past 6 months, that is in 2025. Okay, these programs are asked in almost 10 interviews. Consider one program is asking 10 interviews. Okay, so reverse a string, even it was asked last week, 2 interviews. So find duplicates, count the total words in a sentence. So you before going for an interview, you need to do hands-on in all these program, because we never know what program the interviewer is going to ask. So what we can do is do lot of hands-on in strings initially, and once you are so confident in strings, go for arrays and collections and other things, Java streams, etc. Okay, so please do prepare this program, please do hands-on in this program. Okay, so we have come to the end of today's video, and thanks for watching the whole video. And if you found these questions useful, please do not forget to like, subscribe, and share our channel, and please do comment if you have any questions. And so I hope this video will be really useful for your upcoming interview. Please do have a great interview. Okay, I hope these materials help. Okay, and please do subscribe, like, and share, and click the notification bell. Have a great day, have a great interview. Thank you, bye, take care.